In this section, we're going to start writing our script from scratch again. And in this lecture, we're going to look a bit into how to make HTTP request with K6. Now, this is something that we already did before, but just to recap, how we do things and why we do things in that way is super important. So the first thing that we need in our script is like the code that will be executed by K6. So we're going to define a function that will contain our code. So for that, we're going to use export default. And this is going to be the function. It's a function without any name. And here inside the function, this is where we can start writing code, making requests, and so on. For most use cases, we're going to use HTTP to make requests against the website, against an API. So for that, we need HTTP. Now, HTTP by default is not imported by K6, so we need to essentially bring that library that allows us to make this HTTP request and use it in our script. So to do that, we're going to go here at the top of our code, and we're going to go and write import. So we are going to write here import. We're importing HTTP, and HTTP is available in K6/HTTP. If you make any mistakes in your code, of course, they will be marked in red. All right. So I've imported HTTP, so now we have access to HTTP. Now, look at what happens after I write here dot. You're going to get here a list of different HTTP methods that you can use. We're going to get into individual HTTP methods later in the course, but I want you to understand that there are different options how we can make HTTP requests. Now, if we're just trying to get the website like test.k6.io, in that case, we're going to make a GET request. So this is why we're writing http.get, because we're using the HTTP GET verb. And then here as a method call, we're going to provide the URL. So between quotes, because this is a string, we're going to write HTTPS column //, and then the address will be test.k6.io. Let's go ahead and use K6 run and run our scenario. So if we're looking here, I'm not going to see any issues or any problems in this regard. So our code is working perfectly. Now, what we typically want to do is we want to take a look at what has come back from the server. And in order to work with that information, we need to store essentially the output of making this GET request in a variable. Quite often, we're going to go ahead and define a new variable, which we can call response or simply res from response. So this will contain some information. For example, if we want to see what was the status code after making this request, we can simply use console.log. And I'm going to use the variable res dot. You'll see here different properties that are available. So one of these properties is status. I'm going to select it here from the list. And if we save and run this once again, we're going to see pretty much the same report. Let me make this a bit bigger so that you can see it. But at one point here, you're going to see this info, right? So it's going to tell you source is console. So this is console.log. This is from where this info statement has appeared here. And you get here 200. So the status has been 200, indicating that everything went well trying to get this information. If we're trying to request a page that doesn't exist, so for example, /foo.html, this is something that definitely will not exist, and we go ahead and run the exact same script. Taking a look here, under info, we're going to see here 404, it's a status code for a page that could not be found. Apart from the status, we can also take a look at the response body. So instead of status, we're going to write dot body. I'm going to save the script, run it once again. And what we're going to see here, in this case, there is no body because this page doesn't exist. So apparently we haven't gotten anything, but let's try and remove this and try it once again. What you're going to see here, this is the HTML because this is an HTML page that we're getting back. And you're going to see here the entire information about what has been fetched. Of course, it's a bit long, but you get the idea. So in a nutshell, in order to make HTTP requests, we need to import the HTTP library. And then using the HTTP object, we need to select the proper HTTP verb, in this case get, to get information from a website or from an API. We're storing the response that we're getting in a variable, and then later on we can do something with that variable. I'm not going to log this because this is a lot of information, but in a nutshell, this is how you can make HTTP requests with K6.